Is there a way to create a Joe Rogan for leftists?
Well, as I think others have pointed out, Joe Rogan was the Joe Rogan for leftists. There's just been this effort by very aggressive activists and voices on the left to see any kind of character that's outside the liberal left mainstream and attack them and cancel them. This attempt to have Joe Rogan removed from Spotify, to remove his episodes from YouTube, that sears into the memory of his fans. And when Kamala Harris and other Democrats refuse to appear on his program, that's a dog whistle that, hey, this program, even though it's so popular, even though it's so positive, Rogan doesn't really fight with his guests. It's not like, you go on there, you get owned. He's really just giving a platform to explore the thoughts and views of his guests, and Kamala Harris rejecting it. That almost sounds like she agrees with the cancel culture that went after Rogan a few years ago.
Yeah, and also went after they also went after Bernie Sanders for going on Joe Rogan a couple of years ago. So that, like, when the left was trying to outreach to Joe Rogan, there was this strange backlash. It's interesting that who ended up going on Joe Rogan was John Fetterman. What does that say to
you? Well, there's still people on the broad left that appear, and although they're kind of disappearing, Tulsi Gabbard used to be a very constant presence on that show, and now she's a registered Republican as of, I guess, 3 weeks ago or something. But someone who used to be the vice chair of the DNC, presidential candidate. Look, I don't know. I feel like for a lot of these platforms, they're not particularly partisan or ideological. They're just kind of perceived as that way by some folks on the left, like Theo Von. I'm not a listener. I listened twice to the Trump episode and another episode. This didn't strike me as particularly ideological. They mostly talked about...
That's why it's right-coded or left-coded, right? It's not right-wing or left-wing. It's coded. It's like it reads as something, even if it's almost like a perception more than it is tethered to a specific ideology. Do you know what I mean?
No, that's right. But policy does come up in these podcasts. Theo Von and Joe Rogan, they keep discussing the pernicious influence of big ag, of the pesticide lobby. Something I write about quite a bit, of pharmaceutical lobbying and the influence. Why are we one of the only countries in the world that allow direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising? Why does it seem like the FDA is so deferential to big pharma? Why is it, why did all these COVID policies seem to reflect the interests of Moderna and Pfizer? These are questions that the old school left, I won't say classical left because classical liberal, that's you guys, the classical left, there used to be more of an opposition to big pharma and the drug industries, or at least some skepticism. Because that's died away, the manosphere podcasts have kind of taken this space, but it's really a fertile field. This doesn't have to be a right-coded thing. It really even shouldn't be. Skepticism to the influence of big ag or the big drug industry. These should be normal left-wing issues.
But wasn't it always so obvious? Like, I don't know. I've seen this thrown around a lot. This idea of like, the left him. Joe Rogan is for Joe Rogan for liberals, right? Like he wants to be on that side, or he used to. But like, at least for me, it's so obvious that that alliance was not long for this world. Because if you look at the degree to which the left, as early as 2013, 2014, was really swept up in this wave of being so focused on all of these culture war sensitivities, these identity-related sensitivities. Think about the degree to which body shaming, like what a bullshit concept that an awful lot of the left became really obsessed with. But like fundamentally, Joe Rogan is somebody who's, he's not going to be particularly sympathetic, nor will he pull punches when it comes to honoring that delusion, right? There are certain delusions of the woke, identity politics obsessed left that Joe Rogan was never going to honor. And the more the left became very single-mindedly obsessed with that, which they kind of have been over literally the last decade, the more it was sort of obvious, like, Rogan's not going to play ball with that kind of thing. That's just very fundamentally contrary to, I think, the sort of individualism and self-ownership, self-reliance that he espouses, right?
Well, let me posit something kind of broader. When I was in middle school, when I was going into high school, the most popular show, my favorite show, was the Chappelle Show. And it's incredibly transgressive. It's poking holes, poking everyone, kind of pointing out the cultural hypocrisies, the absurdities.
Clayton Bigsby, the black-white nationalist, right?
And incredibly offensive from the kind of modern lens of, getting triggered around jokes around race and identity and sex. And, I don't think I was particularly unique. Young men, adolescent men gravitate to transgressive content, to kind of rebellious forms of content. They're looking to be edgy and provoke in certain ways, or looking for content that kind of speaks to that, because of the liberal, for lack of a better term, liberal left domination of culture, of the entertainment space. And the media that I used to consume as a 14, 15-year-old, reading the old school Vice, which was very transgressive, to what happened just 3 or 4 years ago when Vice went back and updated its 30-year catalog, adding trigger warnings and firing people who were maybe not as deferential to this left liberal ideology around race and gender. And it stopped being transgressive at all. It just kind of started being clickbait, salon.com type news. And that's true for many media platforms. So if you're a young man and you're looking for transgressive content, rebellious content that's questioning the modern and conventional wisdom, you go to Joe Rogan. And
but I'm saying something a little bit different that I'm curious about. Like Joe Rogan might have technically been like a lefty, maybe, when it comes to some economic issues or being suspicious of certain like big corporations or, the pharmaceutical industry. But like in a lot of the ways that have really counted over the last decade, he's not recognizable as a liberal or as a progressive.
Liz, wouldn't you grant Lee's, like the Chappelle example is an interesting example, because he has just kind of stayed in place, and now think about how Chappelle is perceived. Like he hasn't changed. It's kind of like shifted around him, and now he is even considered like right coded in some sense, if that's the language we want to use about it.
Chappelle
and it has nothing to do with his politics, right?
Chappelle transcends it all. He's more deity than anything else. Let's be real.
100% agree with that. No, but yeah, as Zach is saying, what I think I'm saying is that the culture changed. It's the conventional wisdom and the sensitivities around offending people. Yes, it become more left liberal, but it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, we've just been in a cultural moment the last 10 years, maybe in perpetuity. Maybe this is just the future. Maybe there's such a high sensitivity to offending anyone around these kind of perceived vulnerable identities that comedy and mainstream film will always be this way. But or it could have just been a moment, an extreme overcorrection that these podcasts are now positioned against.
I think the disconnect here, actually, Lee, how old are you? Like
38.
Okay, so like same age as Zach. I think the thing that's maybe different here is like, at least I'm 28. For my entire adult life,
we know the before time. That's what you're going to say, isn't it?
No, the before time. No. From my entire adult life on, like from I'm thinking about the last decade and the degree to which it's been co-opted by a lot of this insanity, and it's literally been since I was 18 years old until now, where it feels at least like for my entire adult life, this has been the dominant culture. And so it's hard to truly imagine it being stuffed back into the toothpaste tube and us waking up and it was all a bad dream, or we were all trapped in the Truman Show of idiocy, right? Like it's hard for me to actually imagine moving on from this type of cultural moment. I think in part because we'll see more and more of this awful gender polarization that make it so that dudes, like, we're increasingly sort of like balkanized in the content that we consume and the little subcultures that we inhabit, which makes it hard for me to actually believe that there will be some sort of healing and moving past this moment, and that these types of things that are currently perceived as transgressive will just become sort of normal and boilerplate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, actually, I didn't realize there's such a big age difference between us, and I think it explains a lot. It's not just Dave Chappelle, Patrice O'Neal. Like, comics used to be way more edgy when I was a teenager in my early 20s. It's just diametrically different now. And for me, I don't see it as permanent, but maybe it is. I have no idea about the future. We're just in it, and what seems to be a strange moment the last 10 years, but maybe it's just the future of America. I don't know. I really don't have an answer to this.
I feel like we should turn to the betting markets, guys.
Hey, that was a clip from Just Asking Questions. You can watch another one here or the full episode here. And please subscribe to our brand new channel to get us started off right and be notified when new episodes or clips go up. Thanks for watching.